Fox News senior judicial analyst, smartest guy in the building, Judge Andrew Napolitano with him now. Is this treason?
No, it absolutely is not treason. Treason is the only crime defined in the Constitution, and it is defined as waging war against the United States or providing aid and comfort to their enemies. And an enemy is defined elsewhere as someone with whom we are at war. So I would defy anybody, particularly Senator Tim Kaine, the first person you quoted, a graduate of Harvard Law School, to justify the claim that it's treason. There's no treason here at all. Professor Dershowitz is correct, the first person that you quoted after the treason nonsense. You have a First Amendment right to discuss anything you want with anybody, and that speech is absolutely protected. You don't have a First Amendment right to agree on anything you want, like some information from a foreign national to a federally regulated campaign, but you have a First Amendment right to have the conversation.
Should he have gone to the FBI, Donald Trump?
He should have gone to General Counsel of the campaign, who's now General Counsel of the White House, who would have said, don't hold this meeting. Give me the contact information. I'll pass it on to the FBI, and they'll show up.
Right.
But holding the meeting itself, though giving Bob Mueller, the independent counsel, enough suspicion to begin investigating, holding the meeting in and of itself and by itself is absolutely protected speech.
Last night, Tucker Carlson called out Democrats for a double standard on Russia, citing how former President Bill Clinton was paid $500,000 for his speech to a Moscow-based financial firm, while Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State and opposed Russian sanctions. Let's listen.
I don't like the idea of politicians, whether they be Democrat or Republican, in this environment, giving speeches in Russia
I don't either, and I didn't like it when Mike Flynn did it, though he was not an office holder at the time. But I guess you're conceding something that kind of blows up the entire Russia story, which is because not every person with Cyrillic letters in his name is working for Vladimir Putin, and you just conceded that. Thank you for just saying something normal.
When Democrats have...
What do you think? Double standard?
Well, of course there's a double standard, but the laws are different. Bill Clinton, and it's difficult for me to defend him, but Bill Clinton can make all the money he wants giving a speech. If you are running a presidential campaign, you cannot accept anything of value, cash or opposition research, from a foreign national, whether they have a Cyrillic last name or an Irish or an Italian last name. You just can't do it. I'm going to guess that Donald Trump and company, Donald Trump Jr. and company, did not know that.
Well, okay, but Robert Mueller's right. Mueller's trying to get to the bottom of it. So let's switch gears. By the way, what did you think of the G20 side meeting between Putin and Trump? There was no interpreter there, right? So
I thought it
for
was,
the American side.
You know, the President of the United States was given an interpreter to speak with his dinner companions, who were the Japanese Prime Minister and his wife. So the interpreter they gave him was English-Japanese. The guy walked over to him with Putin. This fellow doesn't speak Russian, so they had to rely on Putin's translator. I would have wished that General McMaster, the President's national security advisor, had been there, so there's at least another memory of what was said, and I would have wished that President Trump had his own interpreter there. But the conversation took place in the presence of 80 people. To suggest it was some sort of a secret sidebar is ridiculous. Knowing the President's personality, as I do, he was probably trying to charm and bond with Vladimir Putin.
But they're making like this is
they're making like some secret deal was cut that the American government doesn't know about, and they kept it from the press. That's hogwash. The press was there in the room because we saw pictures of it.
All right, switching gears, the Supreme Court granted the Trump administration strict enforcement of the refugee pause, but it left in place a lower district court order out of Hawaii that lets grandparents and other relatives who want to travel to the U.S. to visit family while the case is still on appeal.
Okay, so a federal judge in Hawaii did two things after the Supreme Court ruling. One, he said, is if you have an offer of a job, you can come in, because that is a bona fide relationship. The phrase bona fide relationship comes from the Supreme Court opinion, which carved a hole, in my opinion, inappropriately and unlawfully, but they did it anyway, in President Trump's order. The other thing he did was, when the Department of Homeland Security defined family, bona fide family relationship, so as to exclude grandparents but include in-laws, the federal judge basically went to standard definitions of the word family and said, this is ridiculous. Of course, grandparents are excluded.
Yeah, what does bona fide mean? I mean, how do they come up with that term? It's such an odd thing.
That's the phrase that the court used. And I will tell you, Justices Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch said, Why are you putting this in there? All you're going to do is create litigation as to what bona fide relationship means. They were right.
Whammo,
so
right.
what happened today is a partial win for the administration. If you have an offer of a job, you don't get in, but a partial win for the immigrants. If you are related by blood or family to somebody who's here and they're expecting you, you get in.
Well, Judge, thank you so much. You cleared up a lot. We love clarity, as your friend Stuart Varney likes to say.
Pleasure to be here, be on the set with you with Varney before we even know it.
All right, thank you. Right, good to see you, Judge.